I've been asked to watch part 2 of this because apparently this is bigger than anything you could ever imagine. So let's see. This is part 2 of Stop Killing Our Games.
Hi, my name is Jason Thorhall, also known as Pirate Suffer, and the other day I put out a video called Stop Killing Games, saying why I would not support the initiative. Overall, it was actually quite positive. The analytics on it show that people really think it's a good idea. There's a huge amount of like ratio, and I received hundreds of comments from developers thanking me for putting it out because they can't speak publicly while they're at a business or a job elsewhere. A lot of the times, major companies will fire you if you are speaking out of turn and cause a PR disaster for those companies. And since this is such a popular thing among players, most devs aren't going to say anything to you. So I am. So let's discuss the most common requirement of the initiative, which is games have to be left in a functional, playable state. Now, what happens if that game is a online-only live service game? Well, if you want that to stay in a functional, playable state, that means the devs have to release either server binaries or somehow carve off the game to be a single-player experience now. Some way to keep it functional and playable, right? Now, many of you are requesting, yes, I should get the server binaries so that I can go and make private servers for this. But that doesn't make a lot of sense in the real world. And the reason why is because it leaves developers open to abuse. So let's explore that a little bit. Let's say that you made your own video game and you made a live service game. Maybe it's an MMO, maybe it's something else, right? And let's say that I want to monetize that game, but you don't allow monetization of the game by any other party. This makes sense because most creators don't allow for that. You can't just take someone else's art and profit off of it. Normal, right? So then I go, well, how am I going to force you to do this? Under this initiative, you would have to release the server binaries or keep the game in a functional, playable state at end of life. So I hit you with a ton of bots. I hit you with a ton of exploits. I attack your community. I destroy your Reddit. I go after your business. I go everywhere that I possibly can to make this cost as much as it possibly can for you. And it's not hard to do this. We saw the exact same thing happen in TF2 recently. The massive amount of bots that were attacking the game. This is not infeasible. This is something that is very easily attainable today. And let's say that this goes on long enough that your game dies because you can't afford it anymore and your studio has to shut down. At end of life, you now have to release those server binaries to keep the game in a functional, playable state. At which point I take those, I create a private server, and I monetize it. And some people have said, well, simply don't allow monetization of the server. Well, who's going to enforce that? If you want a government initiative to enforce that, that means the government has to build a registry of all of those games and all of that intellectual property that shouldn't be monetized, and then somehow enforce that.
No, I don't agree with that. If you have in your TOS or your Wayla that once the game goes out of service, private servers are allowed to be set up, but those private servers may not be monetized. You could literally just sue the creators of any private server. You don't need the government for that. As long as the TOS language is very clear that once the game enters ends life of service, it has to be free on pirate servers or private servers. You could enforce that, right? If you choose to. If you're a developer that just goes, fuck it, who cares? Then you can say, fuck it, who cares? If you go, no, we are going to enforce this. And you wouldn't have to sue all of them. You sue one or two. They very quickly realize, oh shit, never mind. Let's just continue, right? So yeah, I don't think necessarily that it is. I don't think you have to get the government involved, at least in my opinion. Kiki, welcome back. Because you're utilizing someone else's IP to make a profit. There's the government that is petitioned to protect the rights via the court system. Yeah, but I am the owner of that game, even though the game is no longer in service. So I still have the right to say, listen, you're not allowing this to be monetized. By pure IP law, I can say that and no one can do anything about that, right?
With no one owning it, because those studios have shut down. That's going to be a massive burden. On top of that, if you want to go the other route and say the company has to go and control it, well, what if the company's not around anymore? Is that just able to be monetized now? Again, this was obtained.
Akolon, if I paid $50 for Legion expansion, if I continue paying the monthly sub, I should be able to play that version of the game. Does that sound reasonable? No, because again, you're buying the expansion so that you can play it at that time. And the way that TOS is set up, you're only buying access to the game. You're only buying the privilege to play the game. You're not buying the game. If you were buying the game, that would be a whole different discussion, right? But you're not buying the game. And Blizzard isn't going to allow you to buy the game because once you buy the game, Blizzard can't ban you from the game. You can now play the game into perpetuity and there's nothing Blizzard can do about it. They don't want you to be able to do that. Now, what I think should happen and what publishers should be forced to do is they should be a lot more clear about what it is you're buying when you're buying it. You should know before you buy the World of Warcraft expansion that you are not, in fact, buying the World of Warcraft expansion. You are simply buying access to that expansion. That should actually be fucking life-size clear on the home page before you buy a game. That please note you are not buying the game, you're buying access to the game. But I understand why Blizzard has to do it that way and why they can't do it any other way, because that's the only way that they can at least police the game and make sure that other people want to play the game.
And through abuse of the original creator. I don't think that's a good route. And this scenario gets even worse if you do allow monetization. Because now I can just kill off your company and then monetize the server and no one will ever come after me. Now it's even more of a problem. So allowing monetization of this work is strictly worse. And for those of you out there that say, oh, this can be done right now, I could just destroy your studio and take your stuff anyway. You could, but this allows a route for it to be legal to do so. That's the problem. After putting this out publicly and talking to people about it, this specific scenario on both YouTube and Discord and Reddit and a bunch of other locations, I got a couple of takes back. We're going to start with the most extreme position and kind of go from there. So in the most extreme, people said live service games shouldn't exist at all, and the initiative will kill them off for good, and that's a good thing. Well, you don't get to define what players get to play or not play. You also shouldn't be able to get to define what developers build or don't build.
I say this as someone that despises live service games. Right? I absolutely hate live service games. But I am fully aware of the fact that I am not the only gamer in the world. And that I would never be okay with any initiative being passed that takes the ability for players to be able to play live service games away from them. If they want to play it, they should be allowed to play it. And I will support their right to play that game forever and ever and ever, as long as they don't take my right away to play single-player games that aren't fucking live service. Thumb1, there's an argument to be made that MMOs fall under the banner of live service games. And it is true, it is technically a live service game. But generally speaking, when I talk about live service games, I'm not referring to MMOs. I'm more referring to games like The Division 2, that First Descendant bullshit. You know, games that come out and at the core of that game is effectively an empty play experience that just continuously fucking washes the same shit over and over again in order to keep you playing so that you spend money. It's a watered down experience, but it's live service, you know, and so why not? I think the thing that I'm against isn't even so much the live service component of video games. The thing that makes me hate live service games is the fact that so many companies are now pushing to make all their fucking games live service. Like, for example, Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, when they tried to make Assassin's Creed a live service video game. And it's just like, bro, can we just fucking not? Like, can we just, like, if you want to make a live service game, be live service, but not every game needs to be live service. Sometimes a game can just be a game. Fucking stop with this. I think that's what pisses me off, not so much the live service game. There's nothing wrong with the game continuously bringing out new content and keeping people happy. That part I like. I just dislike that all of my fucking games are now becoming live service games. It's like, no, just leave the fucking games alone, man. We don't have to keep doing this.
You should not have creative control over the developers, and you should not have control over what is in my Steam library or on my phone. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Aside from that, the initiative does not purport to kill live service games. It would just make it incredibly difficult to build said games and add a lot of risk to it, which is why I'm bringing all of this up and why I don't support the initiative in the first place. A lot of people don't realize that this will slowly diminish live service games in the market because it's not an incentive for us to build them anymore, which means you get less multiplayer live experiences. That sucks. I like live service games. I enjoy playing things like Final Fantasy XIV. I enjoy going and playing in games in the past, at least, like League of Legends. These are games that are live service. They require a live service to run. And you shouldn't be able to take that away from people. And if that's your only position on this, not only are you disingenuous...
We need a different word. Live service isn't the right word. We need a different word for live service. We need... what do you describe Assassin's Creed as? Because it's not supposed to be live service. It's a single player game, and yet it is a live service because that's how they modeled it. Leeching service is probably a good word for it. Shit is another good word. Yeah. What are you doing? There, found my way back to your channel. Glad I'm back. Happy to have you back. Sorry, not Game Pass. I mean Battle Pass. Yeah, online single player. Yeah, online single player is probably like that can die. That can die. If you have, and this is something that I will absolutely get behind. If you're a game studio and you're making a single player game, if that game doesn't have offline functionality, that should be illegal. You should at no point ever require people to have an active internet connection just so that they can play your shitty single-player game. What are you talking about? I'm not connected to anything here that needs to be connected to. It's disgusting. But with online multiplayer function, online single-player can go to the abyss. AC is a live service in that they constantly ship out single-player bite-sized mission-based content. There's live service, and then there's online only. Yeah, but so often all of this just meshes together. And I feel like it's made vague and confusing on purpose. Tubor, don't even get me started. Battle passes and season passes can literally eat dicks. Season passes, specifically in the way that it's implemented right now. I have no problem with the initiative or the concept behind a season pass. But the whole point of a season pass is that you buy the season pass and then you get all of the DLC subsequently of the game or in the period of the season pass included in that one purchase. But then you have games that launch with the season pass being one of the perks for the more expensive version of the game. And you're thinking to yourself immediately, hold on, if this game launches and it's a complete failure, I just bought a season pass to a game that will never have seasonal content. Take Star Wars Outlaws, for example. If you buy the digital deluxe edition for Star Wars Outlaws, you have included in that purchase the season pass for that game. Do you really think Ubisoft is going to make DLC for that game if the game bombs at launch? Imagine Star Wars Outlaws by some miracle has less than 100 players at launch. Do you really think Ubisoft is the kind of company that's going to continue to honor their promise of seasonal content? No. They'll move on. They'll give up, they'll move on, and they'll just, who gives a shit? I think season passes should only become available after the success of the game has been established and after the first expansion goes live. So once you bring out the first expansion, now you can include a season pass. And in the season pass, it should say exactly how many DLCs is going to be included within that season pass, how long is that season pass going to last for, and all of the subsequent stuff that you'll get as a result of buying the season pass. And then, if the company does not deliver on all of those promises, you get to get your money back.
In what the initiative is purporting to try and achieve, but you're also aggressively attacking other players instead of trying to fix something. So the next one is that this is about games preservation, and that it needs to happen to preserve these types of games for future generations and for everyone to always have forever. But I would argue that this isn't actually preserving these games. Social games such as, let's say, Apex Legends, require a number of players to be in the match at the same time so that you can have an experience that is only able to be obtained through lots of players interacting, right? It's a multiplayer game. You need a bunch of people. How many of you have felt negatively when an MMO dies or when a live service game dies? Oh, dead game. There's only 5 people online. Why would I play that? So why would you want to preserve a game in that state? That doesn't make any sense to me. You want to take down these live service games, put them up on a private server, and then play it with a couple of people. You're not bringing it back at its height. You're not taking a snapshot of what the game actually is. You're making it limp on in a way that doesn't make any sense. That's not preservation. And for those that may stop there and go, but private servers going to have a lot of players. Look at all the ones for World of Warcraft. Again, we talked about that. It opens up a route for abuse of the developers. So that is not a solution. And the last take that I got from this is, and it's the most reasonable to me, this is an initiative. It's not a law. Why are you upset? Just wait. I'm not going to wait. And the reason I'm not going to wait is because I see the start of this conversation not making sense. It's not including the actual developer side of the conversation. It's not showing the trials and problems that this could arise inside of the gaming industry for people who are actually making the games you play. I don't have any reason to be quiet about that. And many other developers aren't going to be able to speak on this. As I explained before, it's really easy to lose your job if you're working at a major studio and try to speak out of turn on something like this, especially with something people are so passionate about. Doesn't make any sense to stay quiet. And it also doesn't make any sense to wait until it's in a different form when I see that it has so many problems with the language as it is currently written. Yep. I should be able to be talking about this. In fact, I should be talking about this. I am a content creator specifically that is a game developer that has worked in this industry for 20 years. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I do. So for those who are calling for me to just be silent and sit in the corner, no.
Patches, but that's not true. This entire conversation starts as the Crew conversation because Ubisoft announced that they will be discontinuing service to The Crew more than a decade ago. That's where this entire thing started. It has nothing to do with a single-player game. At least not this conversation. We just watched the first video where he showed The Crew stuff. And now he's doing a follow-up of the original The Crew. He never even mentioned anything about Ross or anything of that nature. Live service game with multiplayer option? Yeah, but it doesn't matter, Patch. It's still a live service game. It was marketed as an online-only experience from the very beginning. So I wouldn't say that at this point he's taking anything out of context. He's still speaking within the context of the conversation here. What's the difference between Season Pass and Blizzard selling you a new expansion every 2 years? The new expansion, I only buy if there is a new expansion to buy. The Season Pass I buy in the hope of an expansion being available to buy. And if there is no expansion available to buy because the company cuts development of the game because the game didn't sell, I'm still left with a Season Pass that is now worth absolute nothing. Or, at worst, I get stuck with a bunch of DLCs launching so that they can fulfill their Season Pass that isn't worth the paper that it's written on. And since it's not written on any paper, it's worth literally nothing. So that's the big difference. When it comes to expansions, I can either buy the expansion or I don't have to buy the expansion. It doesn't really matter. Season Pass isn't that. There's no guarantee that a Season Pass is going to come with an expansion. You're just buying access to a potential expansion that might be coming.
With all of that being said, I do think there's a consumer protection thing that we can fix here. It's just not really what the initiative is about. I think that if you're going to buy a live service game, you shouldn't be told you're buying the game. You shouldn't be told that you're purchasing the game. You should be told explicitly that you are purchasing a license to that game. The reason why is because that license needs to be revoked anytime that you are cheating at the game and damaging the play experience of other players. While this is written in the TOS and the EULA, it's usually not clearly defined at point of sale. Or they throw a giant TOS in front of you and it doesn't really do anything because people skip past it. If at point of sale it says specifically, there's specific language stating that you are either leasing or purchasing a license or anything along those lines that you're not actually buying the game directly, I think it would go a long way to informing consumers of what they're doing and protect them from some of these business practices that they didn't realize they were engaging in. That makes a lot more sense to me than force all developers to leave the game in a functional, playable state. And that's about it. That's all I really wanted to talk about with this. I hope that's clarified some things for some of you and some of the dangers that this can cause as it is currently written. If you're still mad about this, not much I can do about it. Outside of that, I'm going to be gone for the next 4 days, so if you expect me to respond or anything like that and you think I'm ducking the issue or hiding in some way, I'm not. I'm just in Vegas because there's DEF CON going on, which is a hacking convention, and it's the first vacation I've had in 5 years. I can't wait to see my friends out there. So that...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people are... Well, what's interesting is how even this issue is dividing people. And for me, fundamentally, I'm never a fan of telling people what they can and cannot do, even if those people happen to be developers. And I think the way this law is currently being envisioned by a lot of people, they're only thinking about the upsides and they're refusing to even pay attention to the potential for downsides. So if we were to very quickly just recap one of the clear downsides. Now imagine you and I, all of us in chat, imagine we had a gaming studio and we were gearing up to make a live service game, not one of the scumbag ones. We were gearing up to make a proper good game that was going to be live service. But now there's a law that states that once this game goes live, we are never allowed to kill this game. Ever. This game must be online for the rest of time. Will you and I continue to make this game? The answer obviously is no. And it would be an absolute no. I would instantly go, no, fuck that. Why the fuck would I risk that? Because I make this game. In 5 years, this game no longer makes money, but I still have to pay the server costs to keep this game up and running. I still have to pay the licensing fees for the music. I still have to pay the licensing fees for the voice acting, because that usually comes with some kind of a fee attached to it as well. I still have to pay all of this. And yet, I'm no longer allowed to make money off of this because there is no money to be made anymore. So you would instantly kill hundreds of potentially really good games, right? And there would be nothing you can do about it. I would just close the company and open a new one. Yeah, but at some point, that would be people would sue you for that, right? Because you promised that this game would be online always, and they would very quickly spot the pattern of you bringing out a game and then closing the studio and then opening another studio and bringing out a game and closing. They would spot the pattern and they would go, no, we're going to see the living shit out of you now for that. So